Good afternoon, everybody. Overnight in New South Wales, we had 8,600 people come forward for testing for COVID. Obviously, we'd like to see that number higher, especially tomorrow. We do tend to peak midweek when it comes to testing, but we definitely want to see that number go higher. We did record 13 cases, as Health has already announced, 6 of them in hotel quarantine, but 7 are locally acquired. Dr. Chant will provide details. At this stage, all 7 have been linked to an existing known cluster, although for one of those clusters, the original source is yet to be determined. We are seeing now an increase in community transmission, and we do need to keep an eye out for that, primarily in southwestern Sydney and Western Sydney. And we really are encouraging people to make sure, especially if you live in those communities, especially if you've been to a venue or visited somewhere where it's been listed, please make sure you follow that up. We certainly don't want to see further clusters emerge, and we certainly don't want to see further cases of community transmission, given we've done such a good job to date in keeping focused on keeping the virus at bay. I can also say that pleasingly, which is why we have the Treasurer and the Minister for Health here, whilst we are concerned with the emerging clusters, we do feel confident enough that from Friday, outdoor venues will be allowed to have 2 square metres outside in preparation for summer, so long as there is an electronic QR code. So if your business has an electronic QR code, whether it's your own business QR code or whether it's a Service New South Wales one, you will be able to adopt 2 square metres outside. That means have more people attend your outdoor venue. Indoors still remains at 4 square metres, but outdoors remains at will now be 2 square metres from this Friday, and the Treasurer will outline what this means for the economy. Also pleasingly, as the Minister for Health will outline, we know now that how much the arts and the music industry has been impacted. So now musical performances will have up to 500 people at outdoor venues, so long as they are seated and respect the 4 square metre rule. Minister Hazzard will outline that. I will now ask Dr. Chant to provide her update, then the Treasurer, then Minister for Health, and then obviously we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Premier. So there were 6 cases of overseas acquired that were now in hotel quarantine, and 7 were locally acquired. 2 of the new locally acquired cases were publicly announced on Monday the 12th of October and were doctors that worked in the A to Z medical clinic and are linked to previously reported cases of an unknown source. There were another 5 new locally acquired cases which were members of the same household in southwestern Sydney, and they have now been identified as part of the ongoing investigation into the 4 previously reported unlinked cases, including the nurse from St Vincent's. New South Wales Health can advise that one of these new cases is a disability worker who has worked at 3 small group homes in southwestern Sydney. Contact tracing and urgent testing is underway, but we have no evidence of illness at the moment amongst staff and or the residents, but we will keep you updated as that activity continues. And there was one other new case that was linked to the Great Beginnings Oran Park Childcare Centre on the 1st, 2nd, 8th and 9th, whilst infectious, and the centre's closed today and contact tracing is underway. The key messages I'd like to get across to the community at this moment is that we need to get the community to come forward for testing. There is a pop-up clinic at Lakemba. It has been open over the weekend, and it will continue to be open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's at the site of the Lakemba Uniting Church at the corner of Haldon Street and the Boulevard Lakemba. There's also extended hours for the Roselands drive-through if that is more convenient. There is also being established a pop-up clinic in Oran Park Community Health Centre. There is good parking, and you can also access testing at Camden Hospital. That Oran Park Community Centre clinic has been established at 1 p.m. today and will go through to 6:30 p.m. and depending on the demand, that those service operational hours can be amended. So I think that this is a salient lesson for us around how the disease can transmit and how important it is that as we ease restrictions, everyone has a role to play, and I would urge the community to continue to come forward for testing. As you can see, that those individuals that came forward for testing have allowed us to trace back and identify many, many cases and prevent those ongoing routes of transmission in the community. And this is going to be essential. So thank you very much to all of those people that we've contacted who have presented for testing promptly on public health advice, who are remaining in isolation and adhering to the advice we're providing them. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry, and it's a tribute to Kerry and her team that we're able to now make some further announcements in relation to the lifting of restrictions for businesses across New South Wales. We know particularly in our state during this pandemic, some of the hardest hit industries have been arts and recreation and hospitality. We've seen a reduction in employment between March and September in hospitality of around 14%, in arts and recreation around 11%. So as we head into summer, we want to take New South Wales from being inside to outside, and as part of that, these restrictions today to move to a 2 square metre rule for businesses outside their premises, up to 500 seated at outdoor events and music events. And James, I know your father's in the press release, so you better give it a good run, supporting the government's decision today. Importantly, we're also, as part of this, and I think where the business have been very successful, which has enabled us to open up more of the economy across our state, has been through their COVID-safe plans. And crucial to that has been the use of QR codes. So as part of this announcement today, what we're asking businesses to do is to implement a QR code system to go to a 2 square metre rule. And you can use the Service New South Wales app. Victor Dominello, that's obviously his preference, but also we know that many businesses across the state have adopted QR codes as well to push out information and in relation to their business going forward. So this is a step in the right direction, and it's happened in consultation with the business community. We want to do more, and we can do more as we maintain this strong health response here in New South Wales. There's a number of initiatives that have come through our summer summit here, which we'll continue to implement, and we'll continue to work with businesses right across our state to ensure that as we head into March next year, we're able to transfer as many people from the JobKeeper program into paid wages.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Well, on a perfect spring day, you've got to say how good is it that we'll be able to have the 1 person per 2 square metre rule applying to all of our restaurants and our pubs and our clubs, and it will just make a huge difference to the economy, but it will make a huge difference to the ambience of Sydney and indeed New South Wales. Off the back of that, as the Treasurer just said, we've worked extensively with Dr. Chan's team, and most importantly, we've worked with all of the people who represent musical and choral groups, theatrical groups across the state, and Stephen O'Doherty, who is the facilitator of the Roundtable of Vocal, Instrumental and Music Education Organisations, has actually worked with us to represent everybody from the Australia Association of New South Wales Regional Conservatoriums right through to the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, pipe bands, schools, you name it, we've worked with them. And as a result, we are now able to facilitate opening up the outdoors to bringing back the life from music. How fantastic is it that we can now have, similar to what we've had with sport in the last few weeks, up to 500 people outside enjoying their music, playing instruments, singing, but also, of course, it's critical, and I just say this as a reminder to each of them, that there must be an organiser of these events, and that organiser will have to make sure that there's a COVID-safe plan. We do that in every other way, and it's working really well. And we expect that with a COVID-safe plan, we'll be able to have up to 500 people really enjoying the outdoors. Now, they may be the people who are actually performing, they may be the audience, they may be all of us just sitting in a park. We could find ourselves in Hyde Park with a couple of bands, singers. It's going to make such a difference to the life of New South Wales to be able to do this, and I'm very, very pleased. We're obviously looking at further changes, as the Treasurer said, both in the economic side, but just bringing life back to New South Wales. It's, sorry, Andrew, I haven't actually quite finished, but thanks for your enthusiasm. And you're not singing, I'm doing the talking at the moment. So what we're actually doing here is making sure that we bring back life to New South Wales, and I would certainly say to the community and to others who want to see more that there will be more done, but it must be done in a COVID-safe way. And as the Premier said earlier, and as Dr Chant said, we have got 7 new cases. It's a timely reminder that we actually will be conscious of the fact that everything still has to be done in a COVID-safe way. But the way forward is actually very positive. Thanks very much.
Mr Clennell, I reject that assumption strongly. I've always acted in the best interest of the people of this state. I've not done anything wrong. I've not done anything wrong, and the matters you raise have already been looked at by the integrity body.
Do you think it's okay for MPs to get a cut from developers on the side?
Look, I've obviously already made my comments known about that. I will not tolerate, never have and never will, any improper conduct by any MP, and if I...
The problem is no one can take you seriously after this appeal. And it's not about the personal, it's about the professional. Why didn't you pull up Darren McGuire in any of these cases?
Well, look,
Why didn't you report any of his behaviour? He was clearly lobbying for developers while you were Premier and he was a parliamentary secretary. Why didn't you act on this?
well, look, that's all your opinion, Mr Clennell, but I'll say this. At all times I've acted in the best interests of this state. Had I known that any wrongdoing was occurring at any stage, I would not have hesitated to act. In fact, I acted very swiftly when I've had to, and I say again, I'd be the first one to put up my hand and admit I've done anything wrong, but I haven't.
Okay, well you said to him, they seem to think it's in your electorate, I didn't say anything to my staff.
Well, look,
Why was that?
at all times I've maintained a distinction between my personal and private life and the public office I hold.
Yes, but this involves the public office.
Exactly, which
Why
is...
didn't you tell your staff that it was outside his electorate, and why didn't it raise alarm bells for you that he was lobbying for matters outside his electorate? It must have, Premier.
Look, it's really important for me to stress again that at all times there was a clear distinction between my personal life and the way I conducted my public office. There always has been and always will be. But I also appreciate very much that at all times, if there is any example where I feel the integrity of the office someone holds is not being held to the standards accepted by the public, of course I will take action. And if I ever...
Apologise to the Parliament today. Will you apologise to the people of New South Wales for not letting you go and
Well, look, I've already made my comments known extensively yesterday, and I appreciate, and I did yesterday, I appreciate the difficult circumstances that have arisen, but I also appreciate that at all stages I did everything I had to do in relation to executing my job in public office.
Why did you think it was okay for him to get a commission to get it? Just explain that.
At the end of the day, what guides us in this place are the rules that are in this place. MPs, depending on the office they hold, have restrictions, but they also have obligations in relation to the way they conduct their business. Well, unfortunately, I don't set the rules on what business interests MPs are allowed to do. They are based on what is in the pecuniary interest register. They are. Correct, and that is exactly what. No, but that's a different question I was asked there. But the question I was asked there is a different one. In relation to what members are able to do, that is enshrined in various codes and standards. I don't set those rules. They've been adopted previously and are enforced by various bodies. And in relation to your question, sorry, can you repeat it? I was absolutely not aware, which is why I didn't report anything.
He told you on the call.
Which is
Premier, he told you on the call.
which is why that is
You never reported
The matters before the ICAC involving Mr Maguire are subject to those investigations. I stress again that I did nothing wrong, and if I had, I'd be the first one to put my hand up.
Do you admit you should have reported him? You reported him earlier, and he is indeed found corrupt. You could have prevented corruption.
Can I say this also, that regrettably, Mr Maguire approached a number of people in government, a number of public servants. He was rigorous in his attempts, and his attempts amounted to nothing. His attempts amounted to nothing. I'm sorry? I'm not concerned whatsoever.
Premier, the ICAC, you said that you always assumed that Mr Maguire's business interests were properly disclosed. But considering the code of conduct of members states that a member must not knowingly and constructively use or influence as a member to further directly or indirectly with their private interests, if he had defended business, what he would do was a breach of the code of conduct.
Well, that's a matter that the ICAC is looking at right now. That's the question they're answering. That's for them. With all due respect, that's for them, and I trust the process.
You must have
No.
had misgivings about what he was telling you. You must have. Admit that you did.
Can I say I remain firm in my absolute resolve. If I was aware of any wrongdoing, I would have reported it. And can I say this? He approached a number of people, and I'm sure if any of them were aware of wrongdoing, a number of other colleagues, a number of public servants were approached by him. And unfortunately, you take people at face value, you trust them. This person had been in Parliament for 15 years. And unfortunately, sometimes people are able to get away with things without a lot of people realising. No. There are various rules and obligations and business interests which are outlined in the code that parliamentary secretaries and members of parliament are able to engage in. Those activities are not determined by me, they're determined by various bodies. I enforce the ministerial code, however the activities that can be undertaken by MPs, and if people want to put to me in the government a further restriction of what business activities or business interests members should have, that is something the government is happy to consider, and I welcome if the ICAC or any other body wants to make recommendations to further restrict what activities are allowed to take place. I will be more than happy to look at it.
Your relationship with Mr Maguire, did you ever classify him as a spouse?
No way.
Premier, you've been in this place for
Yesterday, Premier, you're asking the ICAC through that at the time of the 2015 election you were in a close personal relationship. Mr Maguire, you said, slightly after or thereabouts. So the ICAC also put out a text exchange in which he was personally him and he congratulated him on a business deal. So were you in a close personal relationship with Mr Maguire after the talking in February 2014, a year before March?
Look, all the information I've provided is to the absolute best of my recollection, and can I just finish the answer, please? To the best of my recollection, and I've indicated all that on a number of fronts. I've provided the information to the best of my recollection, and that is what I've continued to do. Well, can I say it is a very subjective and personal thing as to when you think something changed from a friendship to a close personal relationship. It is a very subjective thing, and I provided information to the best of my recollection and in full openness. And in fact, I was as open as I could be for someone who's very private. I have been as open and as transparent and as forthcoming as I can be, because at the end of the day the ICAC has important work to do, and notwithstanding that it's been to my personal detriment, in terms of having to be so specific and open, especially as someone who holds high office. I have done that to the best of my ability, to the best of my recollection, and I hope people appreciate that.
You've been in this place for 17 years. At any other time, has an MP spoken to you about getting the cut on the land?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we know that members have multiple interests. Members.
Sorry, Tony, yes or no? Has any other MP spoken to you in your 17 years in Parliament about getting a cut on the land?
Well, Mr. Clennell, I can't recollect what every single MP has said to me over 17 years. And if I gave you an answer today, it wouldn't be honest, because who could remember back 17 years worth of conversations? But I can tell you this. That at every stage, or at any stage, if myself or my colleagues ever had a hint that there was any wrongdoing done or any intent to do wrongdoing, of course that would have been reported. And as I said yesterday, I trusted someone who didn't deserve to have my trust. And I'm deeply regretful of that. I really hate that that happened. And I can't...
Isn't that the moment where professionally you have to say, I either remain offended or I'm with this man?
Well, again, I made, please look at my comments yesterday, which I answered extensively, Mr. Clennell, and please refer to those. I answered that question a number of times yesterday, both at the hearing and also here in public view of everybody, so I just ask you to refer to those comments.
Do you think your Liberal colleagues have informed them, have accepted your apology today?
Well, look, I think I don't blame my colleagues for feeling shocked and disappointed. I would. That's a normal feeling to have. And of course, I don't blame them for going through all the emotions of what they've heard. But I also say that I've been very, very grateful and feel really blessed to have had warm words of support that they've given me. But I appreciate some colleagues will react differently to others, and that's normal human reaction when you hear something you don't expect. And certainly I haven't expected to go through the process I've been through. I didn't expect to give those personal details to the extent I did when I haven't been accused of doing anything wrong. And I appreciate how difficult this is. It is not a situation I'd wish upon anybody, let alone anybody in my position. I don't wish anybody to have to go through that. But having said that, I just wanted to say a deep thank you to my colleagues who've been so understanding, and also to members of the public who've been really understanding. And the way in which I will return that support is by working my guts out for the people of this state. I made horrible mistakes in my personal and private life that I did not realise, that I trusted somebody I should not have, and of course I deeply regret that. But that never. And can I?
They were asked with suspicion that you had in fact done something wrong.
No, I've done nothing wrong, and at all times that I've held public office, I've executed my responsibilities, not only to the best of my ability, but according to the highest levels of integrity.
On government legislation today, on government...
Look, the inquiry's into Mr Maguire and nobody else, and that's what the ICAC is looking at. Well, look, they're matters before the ICAC, and no, well, I'll leave those matters to the ICAC.
There are a number of, obviously, yes, it was a child at the childcare centre who attended the childcare centre. Yeah, we can certainly provide some details for you. So I just want to clarify with St Vincent's. My understanding is that the nurse was infectious during one shift and managed one patient. So the contact tracing around that case was robust and rigorous. what I'm concerned about is obviously that for 2 of the clusters, we're dealing with 3 clusters. One of them we have almost invariably traced it back to the source, which was Liverpool Hospital. The other 2, we have not found the linkages. That work is underway. But what I need mostly is for the community to come forward and get tested. And I want to say how grateful I am. You know, when we ask people to go and get tested and then isolate yourself for 14 days, people are responding to those messages and promptly.
Well, they're certainly doing that if they can, but the numbers are good out there in terms of getting tested. Are you concerned about 2 doctors having the virus and lots of
Certainly, we're concerned about healthcare settings because we know that there's a number of people that are being treated in those settings. And we need to take a very precautionary approach. I'm confident that we've got information about when those doctors were working and that we're contacting it and working with the clinic to make sure we're getting that message out. So yes, of course, whenever we have unlinked cases, I am concerned. But I think what I need the community to recognise is we're going to need to sustain this vigilance and high rates of testing for a very long time. And we're doing everything we can to improve the turnaround times, and most people are getting test results. The vast majority are getting test results within 24 hours, and some people are getting it within 15 hours or less. So please come forward and get tested. We also need to remain COVID safe, and so we have to continue to do that social distancing, hand hygiene, wear a mask in those settings where you can't socially distance. And really business, the changes we've seen in business. I was out on the weekend and my experience was a very positive one. I sat in an outdoor environment, we had a QR code, we had a very attentive wearing masks in the hospitality setting. So for me it was a very COVID safe environment and showed how business is really stepping up in terms of this is going to be a long haul going forward.
Well, we actually, the health advice is evolving, and that's a very good question. So we are concerned with the number of community cases we have at this stage. But we also know, based on Dr. Chan's advice, that outdoor, and I just want to specify the 2 square metre rule is only for outdoor. Outdoor settings carry lower risk, and especially with the warmer months coming, the health advice we received is that that was an okay step to take. But I think your question is a legitimate one. We never want to be in a position where we go backwards in New South Wales. And I am concerned, and Dr. Chan has expressed the number of clusters we have at the moment that are growing is of concern. However, we need to make sure that we monitor that, and that's why we are appealing to the community to please come forward and get tested. As has been mentioned, in some locations like Lakemba, the testing rates have increased, but we also need to make sure that continues, because otherwise there are other restrictions we want to ease, and we won't be able to do that if we find in the next few days the cases are going up. And the one other point I'd like to make is that we still haven't seen the impact of the school holidays. So they've just finished, and with the next 2 weeks we will be watching very closely to see whether the virus has been contained and not spread through other parts of the state, and that is also something we're keeping a watch on. Oh, look, there are matters for the upper house. It's always been a challenge for us to get legislation through, and we'll continue to work with all the parties in that regard. Please, no, I've had no contact with him.
Race is on Saturday. I'll be there. Everett's going to be a great day. And this is what we want to do. We want these events that are going to occur over spring and summer. We want the New South Wales economy to be as open as possible. So any day where we're easing restrictions is a good day. And I want to particularly thank Kerry and the health team, because we're working very closely together to make sure in a COVID-safe way we open up our state. And the reality is we've lost 1 engine in Victoria, and New South Wales is going to carry the country here. And the more that we can continue to work with the business community to open up, to lift restrictions, not just for businesses but for major events too. And we've got a whole host of events, and I know Stuart Ayres, the Tourism Minister, is doing great work in this place to make sure that whether it's the races on Saturday or all events over summer, that New South Wales is open for business.